So the new weapon Spear is out, and you may be wondering what skills and rotation should you be using for those boss fights. We now have Dimensional Trials, so it's more important than ever that you actually have a good setup and rotation, you know what you're doing. So here I will cover everything from my build to my skills, specializations, and rotation. You will be able to farm super well. I personally have been getting rank 1 easily in the Gate of Infinity. People are still figuring out how to play it, and I'm a good 20 seconds ahead of the next guy. So let's jump to specializations, as they change how your powers are going to work. The first one you're going to want here is the first point in Javelin Surge, so it becomes Javelin Inferno. Then with your Vicious Fury, you want that Explosive Fury, and you also want the damage increase. You will be getting burst stacks, so this is very useful. For your Unyielding Sentinel, you definitely want to change it to Sentinel's Bastion, and I also recommend getting this 4000 shield. It can help you significantly, especially if you're running a squishy build in these dungeons. Like here, it's giving me like 50% more health when I'm only running on like 9,000 hit points. For your Gale Rush, you'll want to get the Initiative Blitz and also Effect Duration. With Rising Slash, you want Explosive Damage and Slaughtering Slash. And then Cyclonic Fury, you want Critical Aftermath. I also go with conditional damage, just in case I have some teammates which can apply those effects to the boss. For your dagger specs, you want to have consecutive use, attack speed, and additional damage on Cleaving Moonlight. For brutal incision, you want the damage increase, and for umbral spirit, you want the damage increase and the duration increased. And fatal stigma, you want the damage increase. And that sets you up to be able to slot in all of these abilities. Put them in whatever order you want. This is what I go with these keybinds. And then your passives, you want all of these. You can switch out Destructive Fang to, say, Assassin's Step, while you're running multi-target content for a bit of mana regen and movement speed when there's ads to kill. In terms of masteries, you want to go all the bottom ones on the dagger and then the middle ones, and then with your spear you want all the middle ones and then all of the bottom ones. In terms of alternative ways you can play with your powers, again, potentially you could switch off using knife throwing and have Abyssal Cleave for the shock effect and the critical cleave effect to then use just before you use, say, Cyclonic Fury. You would either switch off the Unyielding Shield to gain that, or switch off the extra damage boost to Cleaving Moonlight to gain that specialization. And then, yes, slot that in here, and with your rotation, you'd use it just before Cyclonic Fury. But now let's get into the rotation. What order do you want to use these powers in order to make the most of it, to actually then be able to dominate those leaderboards with, say, Gate of Infinity? And otherwise just help out your team get through the content much faster. The quicker you kill the boss, the less likely people will make mistakes. And so this is it, my rotation as of the 8th of December. Again, things might change based on the certain content we play and if we find any other sneaky synergies. You need to follow this step by step for the optimal way to output your damage. You're starting with that Inject Venom to deal the extra damage on each of your hits. Then your Sentinel's Bastion, a very simple heavy attack boost for you and your party. Then Umbral Spirit, simply additional damage on each of your hits. Then Fatal Stigma. This is going to deal a bunch of damage after 3 seconds, depending on how many poison stacks you have on your target. Then you use Gale Rush. Make sure you're targeting the boss. You can accidentally target players, and you will gain a significant attack speed boost. Then your Cyclonic Fury. This will give you the 5 burst stacks and deal a bunch of damage. Those 5 burst stacks will now buff up the damage of Explosive Fury and cause your Slaughtering Slash to deal significantly more damage if you, say, didn't have 5 Ignite stacks on your target, as that can be pretty random based on critical hits or not. Then you want a Cleaving Moonlight. This is simply for the attack speed buff. Now you need to just cast this once, and when you see it like this with the timer, that shows exactly when you have the bonus attack speed. So you use that to then cast your Explosive Fury and your Javelin Inferno 5 times each, much faster. You should also still have the attack speed buff from Gale Rush, as that can last upwards of nearly 7 seconds depending how much buff duration you have with the specialization. And so yeah, you cast 5 Explosive Furies. You have to cast them back to back, and do be aware you can just hold down the button and it will cast it 5 times. Significant amount of damage combined with all the other effects before it. And the faster attack speed you have, the faster you can get these attacks out. And you follow that up with 5 Javelin Infernos. Again, higher the attack speed, the better to get all of those cast. You can only cast them if you have cast Explosive Fury because you need the Ember effect. And then you'll follow that up with the Knife Throwing. This is a bit of a just extra damage because it's 5 attacks, which then triggers Umbral Spirit and Inject Venom. And then you will cast Inject Venom again. What this is the follow-up hit. You can read it at the bottom of the description there, and you want to have 20 poison stacks, which you should have at this point in the rotation. And then a Cleaving Moonlight again, just for the attack speed buff, followed by Brutal Incision. This has some extra effects here, like giving a 20% critical damage boost momentarily, I assume for your next ability, and if the target's under 50% health, it has a significant crit hit chance boost. And your final skill is Slaughtering Slash. This will consume your burst and ignite stacks and deal massive amounts of damage. Overall, your rotation comprises of a ton of hits and yes, a lot of skills cast back to back. But your burst damage potential is definitely there, and you can do your part in those PvE dungeons, beating up those bosses. Do be aware again, I'm on the fence about using the Abyssal Cleave with the Critical Cleave, as it could be a decent boost for even using, say, before Slaughtering Slash. I will do some more experimenting, and I might use that instead of Knife Throwing. As for the slot in the rotation, it might be before Cyclonic Fury or after the Brutal Incision to buff Slaughtering Slash. The next thing to cover would be my gear suggestions. You can see what I'm running here, and I have a link in the video description to my Questlog. You can see all the items that I currently have on my build, and I am dominating the Gaze of Infinity on my server. I've looked at what other times people have got, and yeah, it's all pretty much near the same. I could have gotten this run a lot better if I had just dodged 2 of those attacks. So the build definitely has high potential, and my gear is not even all maxed out yet or traded. Something that's going to boost my damage significantly is getting buff duration on all of my gear. I currently have stacked none of it. And as per Questlog, if you do get those traits on your rings, necklace, and chest, you should be able to get a combined total of upwards of 47% buff duration, which is a massive increase from my current 24%. And what that means is, yes, your Umbral Spirit's going to last significantly longer. Your attack speed buffs are going to last significantly longer. Same with your heavy attack buffs. And so your damage output gets boosted significantly by that. So I personally have quite a few things still yet to work towards, and will increase my damage even further. And so what I do recommend, if I want to optimize my gear, is actually switch 2 of my rings. I want to get the Band of Universal Power and the Band of the Silent One. You can see that's the only real difference here, but it changes your attributes going from this to now this. You get more buff duration because each point of perception gives buff duration. Your total now goes to 51.5%, and your maximum damage is increased as well. You can see here all of the traits I recommend. Some of them might not be fully traded. Look at the pants, and that's because the rest don't matter at all. For PvE, it's irrelevant. So just take whatever maybe you would use if you're going into PvP with this gear. And this is like a setup I recommend. I've still yet to work towards it though. You can also see the exact runes I'm running with the synergies. In order to min-max this build a little bit further, I would actually go with the Junibut Spear. You'll still get 60 dex, but what you obtain now is the bonus to trigger more ignite stacks on your target while you use Blood Leech Aura. Now this is theoretical because I haven't actually obtained it and haven't tested how good that actually is, but more ignite stacks can be a significant damage boost. You also gain a pretty big boost to hit points from it as well, along with a lot more base damage. We're now up to 542 versus 535 with the Resistance Spear. And yes, out of all the other ones, the Resistance Spear for PvE is the best with this build. In terms of the dagger, there's no question, this one's also the best. You trigger the Gale Blade bonus every time you use Cleaving Moonlight, which means nearly all your damage is actually boosted by another 25 base damage through that effect, even though they are spear skills. And yes, if you want to min-max, the best food here would be skill damage boost 50 and 7 bonus damage. That ultimately should be everything for the build. Those of you wondering what's the story with, say, pairing spear and crossbow, well, I can only disappoint you. I've done my testing on it, and that was like one of the first things I went with. It's single target and it's just underwhelming. You lack a lot of synergy with the crossbow versus what you gained through the dagger, and you can't match, say, the crossbow with the spear as well as you can the crossbow with the dagger, because the dagger gives you all those weakened effects, which allows you to get a ton more cooldown reduction through Selfless Diffusion, whereas, yeah, the spear is not nearly as giving as much weakened effects, and so you don't gain as much benefit from Selfless Diffusion at all, along with the fact you can't make as much use from Mortal Mark or, say, Detonation Mark, because your burst rotation is not as tight as you would find on, say, the dagger. But that's it for now. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.